welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast, episode 35. My name is Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
And this episode we bring you the creators of Tumult.
I was so excited.
Talking all about how the book was formed and their work and everything to do with them.
Yes.
And we want to go for a drink with them.
Yes, definitely.
Down to London town.
Is that
down
your...
to where you're from, the south.
Right, again, Dick Van Dyke did it better
Poor
than
blimey,
you.
Governor.
That is not how we sound. All right? In it.
Yeah, it is.
It's really not how...
No, it is. So we've got a couple of books to review, but before that, I just want to talk about something I'm planning to do.
Another one. Another plan in his mind. Tell him to stop, people.
So there's quite a few comic-based podcasts, UK comic-based podcasts out there.
Yes.
More than I realised, in fact.
Well, obviously.
When I put a tweet up about this. I want to create a website using my very basic skills of website design.
Copy and paste.
Which is going to link all these websites together to show, where you can go and listen to different shows, podcasts, and stuff about
that sounds
comics.
Actually, like a good idea, which is very rare to come out of your mind.
You just whinged, though, didn't you, that I didn't tell you about
You don't tell me anything. You tell me nothing. I had to find out myself on Twitter. Well, I'm sitting next to you in bed, and I find out on Twitter.
Well, you don't need to know because you've got no web skills whatsoever.
I notice I don't need to know anything, like who came home with stuff yesterday and didn't tell me. Plastic men, little plastic men.
I've got a plastic crack addiction and I'm proud of it.
You're in the doghouse.
Why?
Because you don't tell me anything.
What do you want to know?
Everything.
My life?
No. Nobody needs to know about that.
I was born in the jungles of Peru.
Is your name Paddington?
No, Give me another station.
Oh, Euston.
I'm Euston Bear, Paddington's brother.
Who sounds slightly creepy, in fact, from your nightmares.
I'm the bad version. I'm like Cat the car.
You're like what, the car?
Cat from Knight Rider. Was it Cat?
Oh,
Kit and Cat.
Kit Kat.
Cat the cat. No,
that was a girl, though, wasn't it?
No,
was it not a girl? Because Kit fell in love with a girl car, and they
What were you watching?
Knight Rider.
Okay. Anyway, let's move on because she's talking dreams again.
I'm not. No, there is. There is an episode. Stop it! And he runs away. Well, he doesn't run away. They go around like a field together in love.
You've finished your window.
I have.
Bar
the
a
dead
couple of
people.
Little bits. Yeah, that sounds nice. Drawing dead people, me.
Yes, bar the dead people and waxing it, which I'm a bit. The wax is next to the picture, and I'm like, okay.
Well, explain what you mean. Why are you waxing?
Well, because it's watercolour and it's going up in a cafe window. I was worried, and it's getting colder, especially up north. It's getting colder, and I thought it's a cafe. It's going to get condensation on the window, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And that's going to make my picture weep, and run. So we needed a way of sealing it, so it didn't do that.
And that's the way.
And that's the way. Wax for oil paintings on a watercolour.
Should be interesting.
Yeah.
But it all goes wrong.
Don't say that. I really like my picture of death.
Can I give a shout out as well to Matt Garvey, the man?
Matt Garvey, the man.
The man. He's decided to create a comic book for people who've never created a comic book in their life. So you don't count.
No, I know I don't count. Because
even if you've done a little strip that's been put, you don't count.
Gone, no woman, back in your box. That's what
and he was going
to
to print, I think it was 300 copies free of charge to really push creators, sort of create an anthology.
Yeah.
And Mixam have doubled his order for free.
Yeah.
So it's going to be 600 copies. So if you want to give it a go, creating a small comic piece, find Matt Garvey on Twitter.
Yeah, he's done this bit now, though, hasn't it? It's all together.
Has he got everybody involved?
Oh, I don't know now.
I don't know if there's space. There may be space. There may not.
Don't
anyway,
promise that there's space. And Matt's going, you haven't got any space.
Go and chat to Matt if you're interested. There may be possibilities. I don't know where he's up to, but it's worth bravo for doing this because, again, it's for now.
Yeah.
So
now.
good on you.
Letting
Good
your
on you,
northern
Matt
out
Garvey. Savin and Matt Garvey.
Is that your southern again with a southern accent that so
Sorry.
misses the mark?
I apologise profusely. Right, so let's look at some books. Mm-hmm. So first, these are a couple we got from Macclesfield.
Yes. Well done.
Yes. Mm-hmm. First one is Unseen by Emma Donnelly.
Yeah.
Which is a story. It has got a bit of bump, but it's very minimal. But I'll still let you read it.
Thank you very much. An open, honest, behind-the-scenes look on the gradual emotional changes after a relationship breakdown. Learning how to become herself again, Emma notes what's happening in her life and who and what truly matters.
So it's a story of Emma after a 6-year relationship.
Breakdown, yeah.
Yeah, which broke up, and it's how she deals with the situation.
Well, you're broken, and it's piecing yourself back together again, isn't it? And finding out what's important now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And I suppose feeling wanted again.
Yeah, it's a horrible
challenge.
position to be in. Yeah, it's horrible because you've got to find you again.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've got me.
I'm glad you've got you, dear.
No, it's an interesting read in the sense of it's something that everyone can go through.
Yeah.
Whether it's a whole part or whether it's just parts of it. The feeling it's very self-conscious about yourself. You know, are you going to be ever going to find anybody looking at your parents, how they've done? Mm-hmm. And they've done, you know, married at such and such an age and so forth, and you're not achieving that goal in some ways if you put that goal in your mind.
Yeah, but also you look back and you pick up emotional wounds, don't you? So you see how they're getting on and stuff like that. And if they're doing all right, then it opens up a whole can of worms again for you, isn't it? And it's moving past all that, and that's how that book is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's done all by hand, as in there's no computer. It's all just drawn, a bit like how you do yours, straight to the paper.
Yeah.
And away it goes, which I like the
It
style.
adds a lovely flow. It adds a personal flow, I think, to it.
Yeah.
And you really feel the author through the work then. And I like that. And I like her style.
It also, it's done a little bit like a slightly diary comic in some, it's sort of in sections, isn't it? And I saw the art style change at certain points, which I found quite
I'm
interesting.
flicking through now to see where the art style.
Now, I'm not sure if there were big gaps in between, but yeah, I liked the slight differences in some at certain points.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's a lovely, lovely book. And I think it's a nice little chapter of someone's life on paper.
So search out Emma on Tumblr, Emma Inky. If you want to have a copy of that, or I'm sure she'll be at various cons around the UK. The next one is Eleanor Crewes, The Times I Knew I Was Gay. Now this, I believe Eleanor's at the festival this year.
Oh, lovely.
In page 45, I believe.
That's always good.
I'll let you give the bump.
I've got to read the right bit now. The Times I Knew I Was Gay tracks the life of a young woman, recollecting moments from the everyday to the life-changing, where the past gains importance in the present. Looking back through personal history, the story grants a voice to the self-analyst that everyone must go through to know who they really are.
Now, when we spoke to Eleanor, or I spoke to, because you were too busy selling, at Macclesfield, you said this sort of came out around the same time as Tilly's spinning book.
Oh, right, yes.
So she's like, and I think spinning came out first. So it's like, oh, someone beat me to it. But it's very sort of similar style, if you want to put it that way. It's a story of how she's dealt with the issues, learning who she is.
I was going to say, it's the learning who you are, which is both. Everyone
both
goes
things.
through, doesn't it?
Yeah, whether it's gay or straight or just...
Yeah, you exploring your development and
position
growth.
In the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's going to be suited? Who wants you? That's a question that you ask. Who wants you? From both books. When you're growing up as a teenager, you're sort of like, who'd want me?
Or, well, actually, you're thrust, I think, into a place where you're like, who do I want as well?
No, you see, I don't know.
Oh, do you not think that? Because it was...
For me, it was more confidence thing of, who'd want me?
Oh.
You know,
me, it was like...
I'll take anyone, I'm male. You'll do, love. But yeah, who'd want me? And I suppose it's that we all have those questions as we're growing up, and whatever they branch out to being.
Maybe, I think, and also, who am I? I think that is the one in this book more, is who am I, as to then what do I want? Or it's just growth, isn't it? Again.
I think what I find interesting about this and spinning as well is the fact that they're both young women. And the fact that there's still an issue where they feel they can't quite simply come out.
Yeah, which I think
this day and
so
age. You
wrong,
can understand it in the 80s, 70s, 60s.
Yeah.
But you think, by the time you get to 16, 17, if you're gay, who cares?
Yeah, I think it's getting that way more. And I think the fluidity is a lot better. Because, I mean, everyone goes through moments anyway. But, I mean, know that you're gay and then to come out as gay, it's so much harder, isn't it? Like you say, because society is still, I don't know, people will still turn around and look, won't they, if they see two men or two women together, or if they kiss. I don't want to say older generation, but it's still, there's a stigma around it, and there shouldn't be. Because I'm a firm believer of love is love, and I'm quite happy. If everyone's happy and in love, I'm happy.
Makes no difference what someone else is doing. That's the other way to look at it.
Yeah.
Who cares what next door's doing as long as your life's fine? So it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't, no, but I think it still is. It is stigmatised, and that's so wrong.
They're also a good set of books to show what it's like over in the States and what it's like here, and how, even though my perception personally is that it's harder in the States to be who you want to be in some cases.
Maybe, yeah.
It shows this, that no, you know what, people have the same issues over here.
Yeah.
Whether it is hard or whether it's not perceived or whatever. It's tough, whatever.
Yeah. But I think both books need to be read by teenagers. They need to be accessed by teenagers, because both books help anyone at certain times in their lives when, you feel very alone. You think you're the only one going through this heartbreak or this moment, life-changing moment, and you're not. It's all right. There's loads of other people going through it, but it's so personal to you. It's nice to read and see how other people have made it through the point that you're at the moment. So I think they're very important books that way.
I like the style as well. It's very similar to Emma in the sense it's all pencil drawn. And it's all hand drawn wording again. It's all done by herself as opposed to...
Yeah, but then you get the sense of person on there, and I like that. Yeah.
No, it's a very interesting book. I'd say I believe she's at the Lakes this year, so if you're coming up, definitely go and grab it. It's worth a read, for sure. So, 2 books. We have got, coming up in a future episode, Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker's new book, because we've got early access. But we can't talk about it just yet. But we will in time for its release. Although it's not fully complete, there's still some lettering and colouring, I should say, to do, I believe. But
but we've seen it.
You haven't. It's looking very good and different to what they've done prior to this. Very different. With, I think, Jacob's colouring this time, Jacob Phillips. So they've got a different colourist, and it just feels a different
energy to it.
Yeah. Which is nice. It's nice to be completely different from the Killer Be Killed, which we've still got to review their final segment, which will be coming up next episode.
Yes, I better read it then.
So I haven't had a chance. I put a tweet the other day. I've not actually read anything the past few weeks because it's been that mental.
Don't. It's been so busy, isn't it?
With stuff. It's nuts. It's nuts. Festival things are ramping up, which is exciting.
But it did involve me drinking rhubarb cider, so it was
gosh, such hard work.
I know.
Such a hard life.
And we've got to go and test beer, haven't we? Oh, it's so hard.
Not. So, coming up now, enjoy an interview with John Harris Dunning and Michael Kennedy, who wrote Tumult. Pete's not here this episode.
Is that because he's here?
Because he's on holiday in the Lake District.
Anyone would think we'd met up with him or anything.
And we don't have recording equipment as well.
Don't we?
In the Lake District. Oh,
we don't have electric.
No. Unless you've got a sheep to pedal away in the garden.
Come on, Doris, pedal faster.
So enjoy the interview. As I say, we had a meet up with Pete, which was great. So the whole team, and there's a new picture up on the website of the whole team. I look like a hobbit next to you lot. You're all so tall and I'm so short. Mum was like, does it make you look even shorter? Yes, Mum, it does. Oh, poor baby. And we'll be back after the interview to talk a bit more about the festival.
Mike's Mutterings.
Hello and welcome back to another of Mike's Mutterings. I've had a busy couple of weeks that's been interrupted by lots of business travel and overnight stays. So fortunately I have my trusty iPad to take, so I can catch up on Netflix and have a huge comic library at my disposal. I often buy bundles of comics in digital format and then keep them for times just like this. So finally I had a chance to catch up on a ton of titles, and I'd like to share my favourite finds with you. It's a pretty eclectic mix, and probably lesser known titles really. Although I read through my library in a pretty random order, it just so happens that these picks are all from Image. Probably because they do tend to do more regular taster deals for digital editions than most of the other big publishers. Our first slice of randomness is Citizen Jack. This comes from Sam Humphries, of Green Lantern writing fame, and artist Tommy Patterson. Billed as a horror comedy, it follows the trials and tribulations of miscreant Jack Noteworthy and his rise from town drunk to President of the United States. Jack is the former mayor of a small town, and when he isn't reliving his days as a nice hockey goon, he spends his time selling snowblowers and annoying the other residents, mostly by drinking, wandering around in his dressing gown and waving his gun. This downward spiral is interrupted, however, when he drunkenly announces his run for presidency. This is done whilst he's clambering naked out of a frozen lake. It was filmed and subsequently goes viral. So whilst he begins as a joke candidate, he slowly progresses through debates, shortlistings and primaries, thanks mainly to his mysteriously competent campaign manager, and the fact that the more outrageous he acts, the more the people connect with him. This isn't a finely tuned or structured observation of American politics. Despite it being written during Trump's campaign runnings, it isn't a shot at him either. The closest it gets to satire is the power of misplaced popularism, perhaps. But what it is fun, especially due to the fact that Jack is driven by a personal demon called Marlinspike, who guides events behind the scenes. There is not one likeable character, and everyone in it has their own selfish motivations, but this is part of the story's charm. Mental breakdowns during debates, Jacuzzi Gate, and punching a dolphin, and even patricide don't seem to impede him. And his war on children, the true resource sappers of society, is so inspired I can see it being adopted by some party somewhere. It's a linear story that follows his campaign trail. It's fast and it's an easy read. The first volume collects the first 6 issues, and I breeze through in half an hour. But not every comic has to be a deep thought piece or some kind of action extravaganza. A simple fun read is good too. My next enjoyable read was The Fuse by writer Anthony Johnston and artist Justin Greenwood. It's set on the Fuse, which is a huge orbiting station originally intended as a fueling station. It's kind of grown organically over the years and is now a busy city called Midway, and that's in reference to it being a stopping point between Earth and Mars. We follow Detective Dietrich as he arrives at Midway Shuttleport, and he's immediately faced not only with a murder, but also by his new partner, veteran detective Clem. What follows is really just simply a crime detective procedural drama. We have a competent new cop teamed with a hardened grisly veteran in the form of Clem. And we see them interview witnesses. We see them check camera footage and visit pathology for the latest reports, just like we would in any BBC Saturday night drama or BBC4 Scandi noir thriller perhaps. The initial investigation begins as a look into the killings of some cablers, which is Midway's sort of equivalent of vagrants, as you were. This soon grows into something much larger and soon envelops the re-election campaign of a City Hall mayoral candidate. Suspects are eliminated, new truths come to light, and the plot proceeds at a steady pace. This really is prime-time detective work. The fact that it is set on an orbiting space station makes no difference at all to this. In fact, the overall technology and crime lab capability seems very much on par with what exists now, giving it a feel of being just tomorrow rather than far future setting. The artwork seems to concentrate more on facial emotion than anything else. The backgrounds tend to be dull, industrial and sparse, but the real action is in the facial expressions of those people under questioning. The artist's ability to capture the nuances of guilt, innocence, or even lying is really to be applauded. And, following standard cop drama tropes, our two detectives have a good brittle chemistry and refreshing personalities. Trix is a young black detective from Germany, whilst Clem is a white lady well past retirement, which I thought was quite a good, interesting touch. I mention race because the story refers back a little to the history of the Fuse. Whilst it refers to certain characters being born in 84, it also builds up the story of the 97 race riots. It doesn't really explain the background to this, but it feels like the current time of the story is therefore around 2018 with us. And this, I suppose, lends it more to an alternate timeline, and we really are in the now. The whole comic knows what it is, and it does it very well. It's got a satisfying end, and the first 6-issue story arc finishes with a good conclusion and a slight teaser to the next case. A great, fun read, and it is what it is. And finally, I highly recommend crime comedy The Fix. The Fix is the brainchild of writer Nick Spencer and artist Steve Lieber, longtime collaborators. The action starts immediately with a less than daring daylight robbery of an old people's home by our two anti-heroes Roy and Mac. Bravely liberating an elderly ex-criminal's stash, they then remove themselves only to pick up the dispatch call moments later and return as cops. To say they are bad cops would be to lessen the blasé manner in which they undertake the cornucopia of illegal activity. Mac even returns to take a witness statement wearing the same Hawaiian shirt he took the witness hostage in only half an hour earlier. We are quietly drawn in to this shady little world which they have created for themselves. We meet their friendly producer Donovan, with whom they hope to make a film deal with. The sexual deviancy and drug-addled life of this loser is aptly summed up in one of the funniest 2-page montage panels I've seen. They use this device a lot, to great effect. Then there is the equally corrupt Internal Affairs officer, Lieutenant Malone, and she just enables them further. Then we meet the enigma that is Josh. He's the crime kingpin that they owe money to. Part middle-class organic food-loving dad of the year type, and part unstable serial-killing psychopath. The final key player, that would be Pretzel, and he's the best drug-sniffing dog that LAX has to offer. The pace at which the story trundles along is staggering, and Spencer and Lieber managed to fit so much background and character building into just few panels. The montages are superb and so funny, you just find yourself skipping through to the next one. The storytelling is very Tarantino-esque, and I mean that in the best possible way. What violence there is comedic in tone, but it's the dialogue that really feels like Tarantino at his best. There are wisecracks or killer one-liners littered on every page. The situations get more and more bizarre, and yet you still feel like you got to each one organically somehow. And I just have to know if illegal BattleBot betting rings really do exist. You also feel actual warmth for Roy and Mac. Roy is the bigger sociopath of the two, and he happily frames a fellow cop for murder just so he can get what he thinks is the cushy gig, doing security for a messed up teen singing sensation. But he really does only strive to get what he wants out of life, and it's all driven by his childhood dreams. Mac, he's pretty sweet really, totally complicit in everything, but he does seem just happy to go along with the ensuing chaos. Neither of them step out of the bounds of you liking or cheering for them, and that's a really sort of fine line. I should say that though violence is low, mature themes and language are used throughout. It can definitely be crude at times, but laugh out loud crude. The comic manages to have a distinct tone all of its own, and it does reference similar genre media like the film Training Day in a sly nodding way. The art is bright and breezy, and has a little homage in it to Grand Theft Auto stylings, I think. This really was a great find for me, and I can't recommend it enough. Hopefully you'll seek out these little gems and enjoy them as much as I do. Until next time.
All the young kids are hating social media.
To be fair, Skype is probably too old-fashioned, actually.
I was going to say, we're the old ones.
Yeah, we're the old ones. Old technology.
I'm hopeful, man. I'm hopeful the youth will destroy technology. It's the way forward.
Oh, do explain. I'm intrigued.
Oh man, surely people understand it. Like it was really kind of, it's sort of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, in terms of the way people communicate, I mean, that's one thing, but even the way people engage in terms of industry now, I think it can be destructive. Do you know what I mean? So much depends on that communication, and it takes energy away from the work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also like even, and this is something that you might be hearing from other guests, I think this whole idea of complete independence is fantastic. And certainly I hope that you could see with a book like Tumult, we completely believe in creative independence, obviously, and we'd want that for other creators. But, Mike and I have also sort of been talking to other creators, and it's quite interesting that with something like Image, what should be really, really cool, the fact that you don't have any editorial input and there's nobody above looking at you, can actually be quite negative, because there's something really good to be said from benefiting from people's experience. And if everything is do it yourself and there's no kind of skills that you're drawing on, it actually just takes you longer to learn in a way. So it's funny that by kind of busting out like that, in some ways it's not always positive. It's quite strange, actually.
No, I'm not. Yeah. That's a different in opinion. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I understand what I can get it. I get it. I understand what you're saying completely.
Yeah, because I mean, nobody believes in complete freedom of creation more than me. But but it's just interesting that these things have kind of stealth. It's like in a way, like social media and stuff. It's fantastic to be able to communicate and stuff, but we all know it's also a massive waste of time, and kind of can suck energy out of you, and kind of can even kind of divert things in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like where it just doesn't let the work maybe breathe enough or reach critical mass. It's quite interesting. Anyway, sorry, rant over.
No,
that's you guys.
We're recording. That's going on. That's great.
Great.
That is really interesting. No, it's a completely different style, because, I mean, I can understand what you're saying with Nikki bringing out her own comic. A lot of focus is on that publicity and stuff, but you haven't, like you say, you having to do it yourself. You can't rely on someone else to do it for you.
And in a way, people expect you as a creator to be able to do all that stuff. And personally, like, it's really special to be able to connect with guys like you, because obviously we listen to you, and and it's wonderful. And there's certain journalists that you can speak to. It's really, really fantastic to be able to do that. So I'm not complaining, but at the same time, we're not marketing people, and we're not publicity people, and yet I think as a creator, there's a pressure on you to do all of that stuff. And why should you understand that and know that? Yeah. Really, it's about the creating of the work, and all of that other stuff just takes you away from the time to create, so it's the sort of everybody being a one-stop shop is kind of a nonsense, I think.
No.
Anyway,
I've got Ian.
I must stop ranting. Yeah.
Ian does all my publicity.
Yeah.
I just do the comic, and it's much easier because I don't know how to do all that bit.
Yeah.
Look,
the other thing is, I think you find, I mean, how cool has it been with Nick Donasso and just seeing what's happened with a book like Sabrina? It's beautiful to see that, I think he's actually quite shy, genuinely. And, if something's really, really good, it blows up. And that's lovely to see. There is that you can trust to some point that, that really, really good things will come out and emerge. And, and then it's great for people to come around and support it. But, I don't think he has been kind of furiously flogging it himself. It's just sort of been discovered, and that's beautiful. I'm all for that. You know?
One of the questions we're going to ask actually a bit later on, but we're going to twist this interview around now. We're going to severely mix it up.
See how nimble.
How have you found going out and promoting Tumult? Because I've seen you've been doing a few different releases.
I can't complain. It's been absolutely fantastic because, having been lucky enough to be in London for a while, I've got certain friends. I listen to certain podcasts like your own. I go to Orbital, who were kind enough to do the show, this little exhibition that we've got running till the 30th of August. So it's actually been great fun. I'm really, really enjoying it, actually. It's, my complaint about people being a one-stop shop is more a kind of broader perspective about editorial and as a creator having to do everything and not being able to rely on a certain kind of system, which I don't think is all positive. But, at the same time, it does make people nimble. And, I think so far, and I leave it to Mike to speak for himself, but, it's been really great talking to people, and connecting with them. And I think we've been very grateful about how, engaged people have been with the work, because it's not the most simple piece of work. It requires somebody to really get involved and engage with it. It's not just jumping into your face. So we feel like people have really gone there and engaged with it. Mike, what do you think, man?
Hi. Yeah, I enjoyed. Like, I think that past week was probably my my main contribution to like the promotion of the book. Mm-hmm. And it is really good to just kind of meet other creators that have had similar things. So, say with the Apollo talk we had with those guys, it's good. It's interesting. I really like how we can kind of just talk about the book and talk about influences on the book, actually, and hopefully that can connect with more people. That's been quite fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've already said, like I say, it's a great book.
Yeah.
So
It's
thanks.
my favourite of the year so far.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, thanks. It was so nice of you to say that. I was so thrilled when I heard that. It was really cool.
Brilliant.
I think it's quite interesting because when I'm gonna lay on Nikki, when she started reading it, first few pages, she was like, "I'm not sure about this." Admit it, you weren't you?
Yeah, and then I couldn't put it down.
And then that was it. A few pages in, she was done. She was all the way through that book quickly.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm pleased, because as I say, I think it's not. I hope it's entertaining, but it's not always an easy ride. I think like having spoken to some people who read it, they've said that there's a moment sort of maybe in the first quarter where you sort of have to submit to the story and maybe accept you're not 100% sure where everything's coming from. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully that kind of becomes a really enjoyable ride. And I think people feel it comes together, but it's not just spoon fed. And I think there is a kind of moment where you have to either go on the journey or not.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
when you do.
Yeah.
And when you do. Anyway, let's we'll come back to the book in a second. Let's find out a bit about you guys first of all. So Michael, who are your influences as a child in relation to comic books?
My comic book influences. I think it's quite varied and quite almost like a scavenger, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Actually, so like the first kind of comic books I was buying were like 25 pence books from like the Works or like Toys R Us, and it was always like Cage, like the 90s Cage comic. I can't even remember who the creators were. It was just like 90s Marvel trash. Okay, is what I'm saying.
Marvel trash.
Yeah,
that took a second to click.
It was tough because I didn't really have that much to go on as a child, actually, in terms of comics. So it was always watching cartoons like the X-Men cartoon or the Spider-Man cartoon, Pokemon. All those kind of things
that we still watch today. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll just draw those things, and then kind of goes on and say I mature a bit. And yeah, my comic book upbringing was very like collaged together, like very hodgepodge. I
think unless you've got a comic shop nearby, then that tends to how it is as a kid, and you just sort of grab what you can. Yeah. Effectively,
yeah. I didn't really go to the comic book store in Birmingham until I was about 17, 18. So I just had the local library that would just have like random trades. The library had graphic novels to change your life by Paul Gravett, which was a big book because it was just like an encyclopedia of just like independent comics and alternative comics. And it'd only have like spreads of say like Mobius or like Frank Miller's work or Brian Talbot's work. And so I only ever had like those 2 pages to go on for like a whole graphic novel. So that was like a really important book actually.
So I think libraries have changed a lot now, and certainly the one up here, they've got quite a wide range now of books. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Probably, yeah. I imagine teenagers are really enjoying libraries in that way. There's more like younger.
There's everything now.
People stuff.
Yeah, definitely improved from back in day.
Yeah.
And you guys can't say back in day, by the way.
There's something kind of beautiful
young.
about that old way, and it's something that Grant Morrison, right, talks about quite a lot, and he based that Multiversity in some ways on it, with that idea of, if you can't get every comic, and you can't, they're not coming monthly, and there's these gaps, you're sort of filling the gaps in, and there's something actually almost to be said for that as well, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
That you're kind of, there's 3 issues of this, and then you never get the end, so you kind of imagine what the end is, and then you read another comic, and that refers to something that's happened, but you've never seen it, and there's something kind of cool about that mosaic of comic ideas. And even if you are at a comic book shop, you can never read, as you guys know, since you guys actually review, and you must read a huge amount of comics, but you never can read all the comics you want to read. So there's always going to be gaps in a funny way. It sort of almost focuses you, because I grew up in South Africa, and there was no continuity at all. So there was really weird stuff that came through, and it wasn't at all connected to each other. And so you sort of had these separate objects that I was kind of obsessed with, that I must have read 100 times each, but none of them really were in sequence. So again, a little bit like Mike's comic background, that you just have these little windows into a creator's world, and and then you sort of extrapolate out of that.
So, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think maybe if you're looking for an answer that was specific to like Tumult, I think a lot of the things that influenced the book, I was reading or discovering at the time of making the book, like comics from like the 50s, like the Jesse Marsh, Tarzan stuff that John was showing me. So it was all quite immediate.
And also it's interesting because I think people have referred to Charles Burns as well in some of Mike's work, but that was definitely not an influence that he was working from. It was more like he was spotting it as he was doing the drawings, that there were actually similarities, and I think he really got to love Charles Burns, but that was almost more a kind of brotherhood thing rather than a kind of influence.
Yeah. And it's kind of it's tough because I'd have this idea in my mind of what I wanted Tumult to be, and it turns out it'd already been done by Charles Burns. So God damn it,
lies.
Yeah.
I still think it's a very different thing, but yeah.
It is. Yeah.
So,
John, what led you to become a writer of comic books then?
Well, I guess maybe like a lot of people involved in comics. I mean, I always read a lot of comics, and I, even if they were out of sequence, to the point where I remember when I was 10, I was dreaming in comic book panels with captions and word bubbles, and it was just kind of ridiculous. So that was it. So it took me a long time to get to prose, and then I do read prose, and I read a lot now, but comics have always kind of been my number one. So. Again, being in South Africa, there was no comic industry. There was no film industry either, but they did open the first film school when I finished school. And so, so I studied film, and that was kind of as close as I could get to, narrative and image together. But, but I do obviously consider comics a far superior art form to film, in terms of, as the reader being able to control the unspooling of the narrative, not being as passive. For me, it's just a more sort of deeply connected, engaging experience personally, reading comics. So it was kind of, although I never thought I could do it, I sort of got closer and closer to it. And I found that things that I did in connection with comics were the things that kind of worked. So, I did a sort of an odd little piece of work a few years ago, that then was kind of put together as Salem Brownstone and was published by Walker Books, and then Candlewick in the US. And then I approached the British Library about this comic exhibition, and that happened. And so I kind of found myself getting drawn closer and closer into comics, which was my main interest. Whereas other things that I was doing maybe weren't going as fast. So, it was just kind of a natural progression for me, really. Okay.
So, Michael, this is your first book, isn't it? I believe your first graphic novel.
The first big book.
Yeah, big book.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got like a comic book series in America called Spiritus with Tim Daniel, which I was working on like before I went to university. But in terms of like a big hefty work, I guess Tumult is probably the big one.
So how long did you work on it for?
I think it was just over a calendar year. It was maybe like 13, 14 months.
Yeah, because the art, it stands out. It really does. It's so different to say to anything that we've read. It is gorgeous. The scenes in there where you've pulled out from movies and TV references, was that sort of a consideration how you stylise that differently? Did you think about that, or was there a plan around that?
I guess so. I think it was a much easier thing to plan than, say, other aspects of the book, because, you know, in the script it was down as this shot from this film. So it's more like how do I just make it work visually, or like what colours from the palette should I use to illustrate that aspect. So I suppose maybe John could be better at answering that, actually.
I think what was interesting about approaching it is when we realized it was kind of like a cultural tarot card. So those film references and those kind of cinematic references, you'll notice they're much more realistic, than or should I say maybe more objective than the more subjective view of the stuff, in terms of our characters and the movement of the story. And I think in terms of that, we sort of thought these are same as the tarot cards. These are kind of flip cards that have a meaning beyond the book, and all these symbols of masculinity and these images of, action films and stuff, Charlie Chaplin, Kurt Cobain, these were things that needed to be super, super clear, almost, as I say, like a tarot card, like symbolic, whereas the rest is kind of more of a flow and more of a narrative, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it really
does.
hit that as well, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. I love those bits, to be fair, though. They really stood out for me. Absolutely loved them.
Well, look, I mean, the thing is, if one's going to talk about the sort of flow of the whole book, and I don't want to get off topic, so please stop me if I'm getting off topic.
Please talk.
It was like, for me, a big inspiration in terms of the writing was that there's a book which I really, really would say anybody out there who hasn't read it, and I can't believe many people have because it's bloody impossible to get hold of, but there's a book called Wild Palms by Bruce Wagner is the writer and Julian Allen is the artist, and they never did any other comics. Okay. And it's absolutely extraordinary, and it was published in Details magazine in the 90s, and then it was adapted into a TV show by Oliver Stone, which was awful. But the comic is amazing, and it's completely different because these two are not comic book creators, but they've used the form in this extraordinary fashion. So that was a real kind of feeling for me when I was writing Tumult in particular, that it kind of freed me from the idea of writing comics, if that makes sense. I just realized I could do whatever I wanted as long as it worked in the form. And then a lot of the Japanese creators were a big influence, like Yoshihiro Tatsumi, books like The Pushman, Hideshi Hino, Junji Ito, Kazuo Umezu. This whole kind of post-war 50s, 60s Japanese comics, very influenced by cinema, very influenced by silence. That's something that Mike and I have got a thing about is, this idea of silence on the page, letting the pages breathe, slowing right down into a scene. And it's not action, 15 people teleport through from space, all shouting, remember 20 years in the past, 70,000 more superheroes, suddenly we're 10 years in the future. Yeah, God love it. This is somebody who actually does like reading Crisis on Infinite Earths, but all this to say, in the writing of it, it was much more like that. And then it was cinema. So it was like, Jean-Pierre Melville, who did Le Cercle Rouge and Le Samurai. It was probably the biggest influence, certainly for me, and I think it was an influence on Mike, was Blue Velvet by Lynch. Just getting that kind of real sense of mood that permeates everything, and then creating kind of gaps that people can fill in themselves and have a bit of mystery, but at the same time, hopefully delivering something which is actually a bit of a puzzle box that's, that invites exploration. So it's not like you're going to read it and you're not going to know what the hell's going on. But you're actually probably going to need to read it a few times. And there's always like little gaps and things that hopefully you'll notice as you go on. It doesn't just give up all its secrets immediately. Yeah.
I think the cover is one of those things, actually, that when you look at it again after reading it, when you look at it first time, it doesn't make no sense. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, when you look at it after reading the book, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes. In
regards to designing a cover when being published, is there a lot of back to and fro and multiple copies made, or how does it work?
It's totally Mike's doing. It was incredible, and he was also under a lot of pressure to do it. It needed to be turned around really fast, but let him tell you about it.
Okay.
The cover was a funny one because John had a couple of ideas. I had like 2 ideas on an A4, and like a third idea on another A4. So I had like a blank space to just do something else to fill the page.
Okay.
And it turned out to be that's what the cover was. It was like a Frankenstein-y type, like sculptural image of like the characters. Mm-hmm. And then that's what came back as on that first, that first send off of the ideas. That's what came back as the one everyone was excited about. Mm-hmm. And that's really just how what it came from. And everyone. It's funny because the top parts of the cover people kind of understand, but when it gets to the Death Tower at the bottom, I've had things like Darth Vader.
Yeah, I can see that.
Guys,
a
Star Wars
samurai.
crossover.
Yeah.
Skeletor.
This was
Guys, it was
Self-Made.
Skeletor. What are you talking about?
I think it was Guillaume who said that he looked like a samurai.
So we get all sorts. But it was extraordinary because just so that you understand the process, what you have to do, Mike came on board and he had to start drawing immediately in terms of our timeline, and you have to submit the cover within the first couple of weeks.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
literally it was like 4 weeks or something. We had to submit the cover, and that cover cannot be changed, not even the colors, because it goes to catalog, and that catalog goes to the US, and you cannot shift anything on that cover. So it's like, hey, here's the script, here's the reference images. By the way, you need to submit the cover now, and that's the final cover. So it was massive pressure. But actually, when Mike got that kind of by alchemy, that became, didn't it? That was almost a stake in the ground for the style. Once we had that,
it set the tone, definitely.
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear. That I like. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that, because you would imagine that would have been the last thing to do, but of course it makes sense. You need to have it
That's
on the
what we
catalog.
would have.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to think about that if you want to get published.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get your cover sorted. So as I keep saying, absolutely love the book. Is it something that's going to continue?
Well, I mean, I must say I didn't see it as a kind of an ongoing thing.
No, it could be left as it is, but there's also room to grow, I feel, as well.
Tradition that we felt we were following in was something like Alfred Hitchcock's films, which are kind of succinct pieces, and that's that. But weirdly enough, I've thought of the characters more and kind of where that could go. But really, it's not a consideration. I mean, Mike and I have got plans to do other things, as separate from this.
Yeah.
We've just spent a bloody, couple of years in this pressure cooker. It's quite nice to take a break.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, draw some laser guns. Yeah.
Some of those goddamn superheroes.
Yeah. Spandex. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Spandex and laser guns. Spoiler alert.
So, with you being fairly early on in your career, the pair of you, have you got any tips, sort of for new writers or new artists that you could pass on there?
I think just make sure you spend enough time making mistakes in those early years and butt heads and learn from those mistakes. Work with as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. And really set like thresholds for your own like frustrations and temptations and delusions, because I'd worked with a lot of people before working with John, and even still, the process of making Tumult it's a not to get punny, but it's like a tumultuous thing. It's still like a big undertaking.
Yeah,
we're both in each other's lives a lot, and it would have been really different if that was, say, like literally my first comic book.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, from my side, I would say study the landscape. Really, you can waste an awful lot of energy not just looking at the reality of where you are. And I think the best way to do that is to go to things like the Lake Festival, to go to the Lakes Festival, to go to Thought Bubble, to go to comic book shops, if they have events and stuff, because it is a machine, and the machine works in a certain way. It's not just an art form. So as much as you develop your art, you can waste so much time living in your head and about what should be going on and not looking at what is going on, and there are certain systems and people are quite helpful. And I think it's good to live in the real world. I mean, not that I've ever been there, but I've heard it's great. But seriously, there is an actual way of doing things. And I think it took me a very long time to actually sort of get out of the bedroom and connect with the reality of what's happening in comics. And actually, when you do, there's a lot of supportive people and, there's ways of doing things, but, you have to actually go out there and connect with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's valid advice. Right. Most important question. It's not really.
No pressure.
The Lakes this year has got a panel all about the favourite comic book movie. So, off the pair of you, what's your favourite comic book movies?
Road to Perdition.
Ah, good choice.
Ah,
Yes. Sneaky choice.
that was.
Yeah, that's a really good one, actually. Oh, man. I'm really not sure, actually. I mean, I quite liked some of the early, this is absolutely shocking thing to say, but I quite liked some of the early Spider-Man films, like the Tobey Maguire one. I thought he was really, really good. The first two, actually, that kind of amazing scene where the window shattered and he was kind of going back in slow motion and stuff. And I thought he was a great Peter Parker. And it felt quite exciting at the time. I mean, it's not so exciting now, but just to have a really kind of cool, like proper actor in a role like that, I thought that was sort of quite a good moment.
I mean, Willem Dafoe was the Green Goblin. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'm trying to think. I mean, it's exciting that I think Persepolis really worked as well. Not wanting to be too highbrow or anything, but obviously that was really exciting that somebody kind of very faithfully took her vision, to the big screen, and then it won Cannes. That was amazing too. So the other thing is, one can mouth off all sorts of like very, very kind of highbrow names, like there was Mike name-checking Pokemon and X-Men cartoons. God, just get down in the dirt with the rest of us, Mike. But the reality is, I love my kind of 60s Japanese, kind of kitchen sink creators. But I loved, the reality is I grew up on Super Friends and Wonder Woman. It's like I personally love all of those different forms. I think where it becomes interesting maybe is, like I look at my husband, for instance, and he's never really read comics. And so he just doesn't understand like Wonder Woman or Super Friends. I don't know what is wrong with him, but seriously, that he's never going to go down that route. So for him, it needed to be a kind of Japanese, something like Epileptic by David B. Persepolis. I think he'll really enjoy Sabrina. So, you can bring people into the fold. Through certain comics. Whereas I must say one of the ones that I shared lately with Mike, which is one of my favorite comic series, is Javier Pulido's She-Hulk. I just think it's absolutely amazing comics. Or something like Jack Kirby's Fourth World, all the Jimmy Olsen and Forever People. And it's just like, that's just really zinging, fabulous comics. But I almost feel like you need to be invested in comics before you can actually kind of get that, which I don't think all comics are like. I think something like Sabrina, people who've never read a comic could access it and really enjoy it. And obviously comics people would enjoy it too. So it's quite interesting looking at those different kinds of comics.
I suppose we're just lucky we've got so much choice.
Yes.
That's the thing at the end of the day. There's so much choice out there. It's great. So where can are you doing any sort of festivals this year or any events?
We haven't been asked to a certain festival. No, since we've only just released our book, no. So we'll definitely be doing more next year. I'm definitely going to be at Thought Bubble this year, just because SelfMadeHero is there, and obviously they'd love Mike and me to be there. So I'm hoping Mike will be there too. But it's quite informal because, as I say, we literally have just released the book and we're kind of hitting festival season now. Yeah. So I think probably next year we'll be a little bit more involved, but we'll definitely be there as punters, and certainly in my case. Mike, what are you feeling, man?
I will be at Thought Bubble lurking about.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's like you just got to turn up and be a body, I guess. The thing. Yeah. Be on time and enjoy it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, see what's going on, and like you said earlier, just meeting new people is just great in the comics industry. It's Superb.
But guys, it's interesting. I mean, in terms of, I'd quite like to ask you guys a question.
Oh, geez.
Like, what do you think of the process of graphic novels in particular? Because what was interesting for us is like we almost sort of stumbled in. Well, certainly I did. I stumbled in as like a complete idiot, like walking into sort of jungle, falling into the old bamboo Sharpie trap, hidden under some leaves where, basically I was like, I'm going to write a whole book, a graphic novel. What could possibly go wrong? Cut to like years and years of agony getting it made, because it's a single piece of work. So you're not putting it out as issues. It's not having that production trajectory. It's not making any money back initially. You literally are blocking out a huge amount of time for a singular vision. But at the same time, as a creator, it's really satisfying. And, I think that was the same for Mike. It was a real sacrifice to make this book, but we reached such a kind of creative epiphany on it because you're just living in this one world. Yeah. How do you guys feel about that? Like, in terms of, you must see a lot of graphic novels, you must talk to a lot of creators. What have you sort of found about that? Like, what?
I think the first thing when we speak to creators about graphic novel creating is kind of what you said, is they spend so much time on it that when they finished it, that's it. They want to take a break because it is such a process.
It does take over their life.
It does, yeah. And I think whether some people find it worthwhile in the long run, it differs per person, doesn't it?
Yeah, but we've spoken to people where it's completely destroyed them almost, hasn't it? And they've stopped
that's
altogether.
Multiple books,
and then other people have treated it as a business more, and then they allocated time, and they seem to be...
Tilly Walden's a particular one there who just plows through her work and gets it out.
Gets through it very quickly. So
I think it's hard. I mean, from just somebody who reads it, my impression is you should be proud of that book.
Oh, gosh.
Whatever work you've done, you spent a year and a half making that book. You should be bloody proud of what you've created.
Well, thanks, guys. But honestly, the reason I'm saying that is just because it is so satisfying to hear you guys enjoying it so much. Because as you say, you kind of you let it go and you sort of don't think about it anymore. So it's really nice to feel like it's gone out and you've actually sat down and had a good experience with it. And hopefully there's a few people doing that, because you just, it moves away from you, and that's as it should be. But it's a huge time investment. And I would say people should think about that, but personally for me, and I hope it's the same for Mike, as painful as it was, it's incredibly satisfying because you get to have this coherent vision, and a piece of work that you can't make episodically. It's just a different process. Not that there can't be amazing work episodic that's collected, but it's just not the same, No,
I think as readers, we're the type of people that we'd rather have the full story.
Yeah.
In our hands. We want to read and finish that story. And go back to it.
And also, dude, it's as basic as, this from nuts and bolts writing. It's like you write the book, you get to the end, you're like, oh, actually, I need to just jazz up the middle. Actually, I'm just going to change the beginning so you get a bit more subtlety. You just can't do that if you're just doing it issue by issue. With the best will in the world and however much you plan, you just cannot write like that. You can't draw like that because you don't have the whole script. It's a different depth, but it's bloody difficult as well. So, do not try this at home unless you want to.
You've got to be dedicated, I think, is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But as we keep saying, I'm going to keep saying it. Tumult at the minute, it's number one book of the year.
Oh, thanks, guys.
We'll see if it can stay there. Not many months left.
Totally. Well, what we'll do is we'll come next year at the same time, and we'll still holding up sash and crown.
So where can they find you two guys on social media if they want to find out a bit more about you or online?
Mike, where are you, man?
I think my Instagram is probably the best place to find me. It's like _Michael_Kennedy. There'll be lots of weird drawings with bright colours, making them accessible.
Great. And I mean, the other thing is just, and it's really interesting to go and explore Mike's Instagram because he's so broad stylistically, I think you can even see within Tumult, he's switching styles a few times, and it seemed rude not to get him to do that because, but that's only like a tiny glimpse of what he does. So that Instagram is a real pleasure to go and investigate. I can be found on John H. Dunning on Twitter and on Instagram as well.
Twitter.
On Twitter.
Guys, that's my social media accent. Okay. So you can find me there, and it's always interesting to hear from people.
Multi-layered personality.
That's just one of them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Such fun.
Need another podcast all about comic topics, reviews, and just general chit-chat? Then join
David Robertson,
Fernando Pons,
Mike Sadakat,
Giuseppe Lambertino,
and me, Tom Stewart, at That Comic Smell. You can find us on SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes, and on Twitter and Instagram at That Comic Smell. Pull up a chair and join us.
Angel Corps to arrive at New Kendall Base. Her Majesty's Angel Corps Squadron are returning to the Kendall Airship Base after travelling around the world on a mission to protect the world-famous Hodgson's Indian Pale Ale from dastardly sky pirates. The popular IPA recipe was said to have been changed by one of the factory's automatons, who fell into a bath of the alcohol and was said to have started thinking after he was fixed. While the automaton apparently altered the brew without the awareness of its manager, Mr. Hodgson, some say this may have saved his dying business. However, Mr. Hodgson claimed he didn't realise his automaton had the ability to think, refused to supply further comment on this strange machine. The all-female squadron visited Kendall last year to see the progress on their new airship base. However, they left a rather bitter impression on the local bars and their patrons after a series of fights broke out due to the comments made by allegedly sexist barmen and customers. Hopefully the townspeople won't mind the Angels returning, especially as they have chosen our lovely town as their base. Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Why are you doing that, dear?
I'm practicing my Radio 4 voice.
Oh, jolly good. Right, let's look at some events. Tally-ho. Some events that are going on. We're going to pick some random events that are going on at the festival.
Do it.
The first one, Crime Lords.
I'm not sure it's going to be said like that, though.
It just sounds better than...
Crime Lords.
Yeah, it makes it sound like they're going into the crime of the devils.
I thought it sounded more like a fart.
Anyway, Crime Lords, John Wagner and Ian Rankin.
Now, there's two people I wouldn't mind getting stuck in a lift with.
Why?
There'll be interesting conversations. Yeah, I've completely lost you now, haven't I? Saying that I'd like to be stuck in a lift with them.
Yes. Essentially, they're getting John Wagner and Ian Rankin to talk about crime stuff.
Sounds brilliant, because you know that I know a lot about crime.
You do. So, obviously, we've interviewed Sir Ian Rankin, as we're now going to call him.
Sir Ian Rankin.
We've not had John Wagner yet.
No.
We need John Wagner.
But we will.
But yeah, they're going to be chatting away on the Saturday at 10 o'clock. So that's well worth going to see.
Yes, I'll be there.
The next one on the Random Fun Wheel.
The Random Fun Wheel of Fun.
Talking Frank quietly.
What?
Talking Frank quietly.
Sorry?
Talking Frank quietly. He's a modest but extraordinary artist who started his career in his native Glasgow, writing and drawing the greens for an independent published Electric Soup. And basically going to be chatting to Frank by Alex Fitch from Renaissance FM. Is going to be chatting to him about his work and his work.
Well, there you go. His work.
This is great. Picking stuff randomly, not preparing it in advance, isn't it?
You're doing well. Carry on.
Isn't it really interesting one? Graphic Revelations, an audience with Guy Delisle. Now, so we've read one of Guy's books.
We did.
About North Korea.
Yes.
So he's done quite a few.
Really interesting.
He travels to Burma, China, Israel, and of course North Korea. And he's going to be talking about his books.
Yeah.
And he's probably got a lot to talk about.
I think so.
To be
He's not going to fit it all in an hour, is he?
No. Most recently, guys, 2017 work Hostage tells a true story of one man's kidnapping in the Russia Republic of Ingushetia. I'm going to say that's right.
What? The Russian Republic of where?
Yeah. Anyway, no, but we've only read one of his books, but that was
the Korean one. It was really good, and it was really thought provoking. And you're like, is this real? You know, can a country really be like this when it is?
It is. So that's Saturday, 12:15. Now, whether that country's going to change or not,
I hope so. I hope there's a movement to change. I think it's going to take a long time.
And then we'll do one more.
Go on then. Spin that wheel.
Alternative heroines. Since the beginning of comics almost 180 years ago, female
protagonists. Is it protagonists?
Cut, delete. Female protagonists are few and far between. Almost 70% of well-known comic characters are male. Which I thought it would have been higher than that, to be honest, sadly.
Yeah, it's taken time, hasn't it, for the female... Well, they're still fighting.
Yeah.
Get the female superhero in there.
Yeah. So, they're doing an exhibition this year, which is talked about, of role reversal. So such female turtles and so forth, and some of the names that come out hilarious.
Yes.
And this is basically going to be a interview discussion about female representation in comics, which is going to be at Brewery Arts Centre, Screen 2 at 12:45 on Saturday, which clashes. So this is a problem with the festival. You got to work out what you're going to see. You got to work out what you want to watch and what you want to see most.
We've got to, when we get the printed copy, we can sit and circle things like you used to do at Christmas with the Argos catalogue.
So this, another really interesting and something very different to what's been done before. And again, talking about the issue, the books we read before. Yeah. It's another issue of bringing women into the comics and characters. And I suppose it's not just bringing women into comics, because women are in comics now. It's a lot better. It's more the characters, isn't it?
Yeah, good characters, good storyline, and, really running with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we're finally seeing the Marvel films very slowly catch up at last. Getting there. Yeah. Still a long way to go, though.
Yeah.
But it is just finding those characters that have been created to be really interesting. That's the thing. And they just...
A lot of them through the shoehorned in, don't they?
The 50s, 60s, and however the focus was on these male characters. So it's...
you've only really got Wonder Woman, I suppose, as the first.
Well, that was the big one, but it was that one woman to throw in. Yeah. So, but it's slowly changing.
Too slow, but yeah.
I'm going to give you one more, which I think this is an important
one. Oh, is this
the bonus one? Bonus event. If you get that, you're very sad, like me. Traces of the Great War, the official launch. So the launch of the Traces of the Great War book, which we've interviewed numerous creators in regards to this, is going to be 4:00 on the Saturday. It's going to feature more than a dozen writers and artists who've contributed, including Charlie Adlard, Joe Kelly, Victoria Lamasco, Miko, Robbie Morrison, Ken Niamura, Sean Phillips, Ian Rankin, Orjit Sen, and Brian and Mary Tablet.
You were doing so well. I was so impressed that you were getting.
And then I get to a nice easy name,
and you messed up
I
right
blow
at the end.
It. So that again, this is an important book from what we've seen, and looking forward to getting it in our hands. To be honest, just full stop. So I suppose especially if you're interested in getting a book, that'll be the perfect time to get some signatures, possibly as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or probably straight afterwards.
Be there, won't they? Yeah. So we can grab them.
Sorry.
To sign things.
Oh, that's all right then.
No, not to go in my
your dungeon.
My dungeon.
Comic dungeon.
My comic dungeon.
It's concerning that it's actually true.
Shh.
Has anybody heard from Duncan Ferrago since last year?
No one.
He's
fine. I give him donuts and chips. He's fine. Lots of paper.
Donuts and chips. Right, so what we got coming up now then? We've got volunteers meeting coming up.
Yes, next week, isn't it?
Which will be interesting. Mm-hmm. Then we've got your work going up towards the end of the month in the cafe.
Yep. I'll take a picky when it's up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we've got a comedy event at the Fell Bar, which I may or may not be involved with yet. We'll see.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
Dear.
There's a lot going on, and we're really looking forward to it. We've already done the interview for the next episode.
Yep.
Which is the guys behind
Dan
Dare audio drama playing on Radio 4 Extra at the moment. Have a listen to that.
B7 Media.
That's the one. Really interesting. And that'll be up 15th.
Yep.
And then after that, we'll have an episode, mini interviews, including beer tasting, because,
Because we were asked, and it's rude to say no.
Can't say no to these things.
No, it's like, do you want to taste the festival beer? Okay.
How much will it cost now? Oh, right then.
I'll do it for the good of the festival.
And then before we know it, the festival will be on us.
I know. Which is a worry. Are we ready? Are you ready?
Just to thank you to That Comic Smell podcast for playing our trailer in their podcast.
They are so nice.
You'll have heard theirs.
Yes. Yeah.
In ours at some point, whatever point I put it in.
I hope they've recovered from my book. I feel like I wounded them.
Why? Explain.
Because they're still crying over it. I'm so sorry.
You're not, though.
No, I'm not.
No. You're just destroying people left, right and centre.
I know.
Now they know how I feel in my life.
I get a lot of, I've been told by a lot of people that it's made them cry.
So if you want to cry, go to nickydraws.uk and buy a book.
I didn't mean it to make people cry.
Thank you very much for listening.
Yes.
We'll be back on the 15th.
Not long.
Not long with B7 Media.
15 days.
Oh dear. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.
This podcast is part of Britpod Scene, an independent network of uniquely British podcasts that's always growing. Check out BritpodScene.com or Britpod Scene on Twitter to find out more.